Member for Fox Hill.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, the only point I want to make is that there was an expression during the course of the last intervention about Chinese investment and Chinese money and do not give licenses to Chinese and so on and so forth. I just think that from an official point of view, we have to be very careful about the use of language and not come off as racist. When the project at Paradise Island was purchased by a gentleman who I believe is Russian, it was interesting that the public commentary never said a Russian is buying one and only. When American investment takes place in the Bahamas, people hardly say Americans or so on and so forth. But suddenly it's Chinese, as if there's something wrong intrinsically with being Chinese. There's nothing wrong intrinsically with being Chinese. They're Chinese companies that have invested in the Bahamas. They came here under the rules of the Bahamas. They follow the law. They have a mortgage. And you don't want to give the impression that we are taking a stand as a country or as a parliament against people because of their national origin. You have to be very careful about that. And secondly, when you look behind, if you forensically examine, after this is over, you forensically examine what has actually transpired with that project out west, you would see it's the Chinese capital that actually saved a very valuable project for this country. That's number one. And number two is, now that the project has some difficulty, I would venture to guess it is not the Chinese, as you say, that are the issue here when you look behind what is in fact the issue. So I think, I know you want to sort of throw everything in the kitchen sink at us. That's one thing. But, I just think the language needs to be more judicious when it comes to that, so that there's no mistake that you're not making a comment which is racist.
Thank you, Honourable Member for Fort Charlotte. Your final response?
But the member for Fox Hill makes an excellent intervention. And as our nation's chief diplomat, that is his job. And I know that it may have come across that I was intending to, or it may have appeared as though I was reckless in my statements. I want the record to reflect that the point I wish to make is that I am very zealous in my interest that the labor component of this new initiative in downtown New Providence, as associated with China State Construction Company, because my understanding is they purchased the property. My interest is in seeing that as many Bahamians as possible are employed on that project, because I know that the Chinese in their investment policy, and we should all know that they're making significant inroads in the Americas, throughout the Americas, and throughout the world for that matter. And some would argue that, that the experience has not been altogether positive for many of those countries where the terms of these agreements have stipulated that the entire labor component is of Chinese. And I don't say Chinese out of any racist motive or intent. I have no difficulty with the Chinese. I think the Chinese are beautiful people. I lived in Chinatown for 4 years while I was training to become a dentist, Mr. Speaker, before becoming an orthodontist. And my point is this, that the Chinese have no difficulty with me as far as who they are as a people. The difficulty I have is that we are now dealing at the level of government to government. And I do not, my interest is in seeing our government fight as hard for and on behalf of the Bahamian people as the Chinese government fight for and on behalf of the Chinese people. That's all. So please let the record reflect that no ill intent was meant to the people of China. I hope that we will continue to nurture cordial relations with the people of China as we do with people around the world. We can only be effective if we are fully engaged in the with the international community. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, that we were put in this place by Bahamians who wanted us to come in here and try to deal with one of the major problems affecting this country, and that is the high rate of unemployment. We cannot do that if we duplicate the mistake that we made with the Bahama project. So let the record reflect, and I have, you know, I know that this is one of the hardest working politicians in this country. He and I obviously now see very differently. But let the record reflect. I appreciate his intervention, and I thank the House for giving me an opportunity to say what I've said.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Member for Fox, huh?
You're not PLP anymore. That's the other thing. You're not PLP, I'm PLP. You know, all the way. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. I shouldn't be speaking to you across the floor. That's the first time I've had a dialogue with him in months. He used to speak to me, but you know, it's all stopped now. But never mind. The point I do want to make as the public policy point, though, is in connection with this particular project, is the project at Cable Beach was negotiated by the previous administration on specific terms. If you will remember, when you were with us, we took the position that we would not have that replicated in any successor agreement. So when this agreement for the purchase of the present property was put in place, I think there is a limit in the heads of agreement on what the content is of foreign labor. And that was done specifically in answer to the criticisms which you made in your last intervention, to be sure that there's a maximum input of Bahamian labor. Yes, and you know, and this is a vexing part. When the British Colonial was built in 1922, if you go back and see the records, they were complaining about bringing foreign artisans to build a hotel in that time. So it's not a new problem. The problem is we have to make sure that the training is done so that the labor pool is there. Because as the immigration minister, people are constantly coming up and saying, oh, the labor skills aren't here, you know, you can't find the workers, so on and so forth. So, but we're determined that that's not going to happen with regard to any project that we're involved in going forward. It's Bahamians first, and we mean that. You know, whether you accept that or not, we mean that. Bahamians first.
Thank you, Honourable Member.